Hi, I'm Dr. Randy Ross, and this is Relationomics, where we talk about everything related to business, life, and relationships. If you enjoy the content, then like, share, and subscribe, and join the conversation in the comments below. Today, I'm talking to Kendall Ware, a dynamic young leader who sits at the helm of Orange Leaf Frozen Yogurt. Now, Kendall understands what it means to motivate a multi-generational workforce, and has a keen eye at customer service. So listen in as we grow together. You're also, I think, the only CEO I know that inline skates, but that's all right.
That was technically my first paying job. It was a professional inline skater. So I got sponsored right when I was around 15, almost 16. At age 16, I became a busboy at a restaurant, nearby.
Right.
But my first paycheck that I received was from Rollerblade, which is the largest, manufacturer of inline skates out there in the U.S. today.
Yeah.
And so I got sponsored at age 15, and I started to just travel the country, do competitions, had to produce a lot of videos, and just wear all the clothing and promote the skates and the brand as a whole. And it really started to teach me more about business and marketing, and again, that's where the travel kind of started. And so from there, it just started to trickle. But that was a fun time, and I did that all. I did it professionally and sponsored all the way until I was about 22, and then at the same time, my career in franchising and restaurant business started to grow, and I had a decision to make. Because next thing you know, I'm asked to open a store on this date, but it's the same date as the competition over here, and I just couldn't make it happen. So
got it.
Had to move on.
So but you haven't laid the skates down.
I have not laid the skates down. That is my way to just release the stress and the energy, and it's my daily workout. I try to do it as much as I can. I do bring them with me when I travel. There's a lot of times where I'll go speak at a conference, and then I'm done. I walk off the stage, put my skates on, and I go explore the city.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, and you just brought a new one into your home. So Lively was born. How old is she now?
She is now 6 weeks old.
Wow.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
So
brand new baby girl.
A young dad.
Yes, I am.
I love it. So you're
save the best for last.
Well, so you saw all 50 states by the time you're 30. Now you're the ripe age of 31,
right?
And you're a father. How
right.
has that changed your perspective on life?
It changed big time, and for the better, right? Everybody, and maybe you even told me this at one point, but so many people have told me where, or when you have a child, this feeling takes over that you've never had before, and there's no way to explain it. And you hear it so much, like, yeah, I understand. I did not understand until she was born, and then everything just changes, right? Your priorities shift. Your mindset shifts, and next thing you know, this person, this child is literally controlling what you do on a day-to-day basis, and you love it. You're happy
including
to do it.
Your sleep.
Correct. That's the one thing I'm not used to yet, is how to operate on no sleep, but it's life-changing, and it's for the better, and it's probably the best accomplishment I've had so far.
Well, now you have two beautiful girls in your life, and I'm happy for you and Ariel, so congratulations.
Right. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So how do you win the talent war? What do you do?
We focus on what all we can add from a value standpoint. That's what it comes down to. If all marketing conditions are the same in terms of minimum wage, weather, all these different things, the industry as a whole, what can you do internally that starts to create a buzz or starts to create some awareness around what value Orange Leaf, in this case, can add to the team member or the employee that's coming on board?
Sure.
So we have this internal, focus and overall our overarching goal of becoming the best first job.
I like that.
And that mentality, you can never truly accomplish that, but it's about striving to become that.
Right.
And
well, one of the things I like about that, and we've often talked about this, is that in any sort of let's just call it QSR or treat environment in the hospitality space, your turnover is high.
Very high.
And so you're talking about high school students, you're talking about college students, you're talking about a revolving door of talent.
Right.
But you don't so much worry about that. As a matter of fact, you've kind of come up with a creative way to inspire leaders across the board to view that differently.
Correct.
How so?
So this is this creates a lot of controversy, and people scratch their heads and say, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. But the way we phrase it is embracing turnover.
Embracing turnover.
Embracing turnover.
Which means?
What we mean by that is just accept it. Name any of the conferences that I've been to in the last 10 years of all different franchises and restaurants and different speakers and all that. No matter what, there's been at least one person speaking about turnover. And it's been a constant theme. And so instead of keep going down this pathway of how we all figure out how to, make it go away or make it better or reduce it, why not just embrace it? Because you can't keep spending all the energy and the time and the effort and the money to try to fix something that might just be a natural part of the business. And so instead of us worrying about, how long were they here? Why are they leaving? And all these different factors, let's embrace the fact that they're part of our team currently.
Right.
So what can we do to make them better? Right.
So therefore, America's best first job.
Right.
Right. And so how do you approach that from an investment standpoint in them?
Sure.
Because if they're going to be there for a short season, and obviously if they're students,
right,
they're eventually going to graduate from high school, they're going to go on to college, or if they're in college, they're going to get a more steady job wherever they go. So in a way, you do have to embrace that.
Absolutely.
But you're committed to investing in their long-term success while they're with you, which is what I love.
Right. Because think about it. If you're 16 years old, maybe 18, you're going to get your first job. You haven't really learned much about business just yet. And typically, and this is in my case, you don't learn about it until way later in life.
Right.
But if you could bring in someone of that age and off the bat, they're learning about the business, they're learning about the franchisee-franchisor relationship, and they understand all the factors that go into this company that they work in, they're going to start to realize that they're gaining value and education from this first job. Whether they're super hyped about it or not, whether their parents made them go get that first job, you want them and the parents and their friends to all hear that, I actually learned how to open up a bank account today at work. They set me down for 20 minutes and invested this time to teach me something I didn't even know I had to do yet. Or teach them some simple things about taxes, or what is food cost? How does food cost actually work in the business? How can you ensure this company operates longer and has more financial stability? Well, here's a couple things you could do. And when people start to understand the why behind all these things that are talked about, or why the schedule is so important, and all those different factors, they start to care more about that business.
Absolutely.
Right? And so we try to promote this as much as we can through our franchise partners and get them to find ways to invest in their team outside of just what Orange Leaf can provide as an employer. Right?
See, this idea of equipping your partners, your owners, to invest heavily in the young talent that comes their way. It's brilliant because of a couple of things. One, it develops a strong emotional attachment. Those employees leave with a deep appreciation. They will always have a fond affection for the investment that those partners made in them while they were there. And number two, when parents in the community begin to hear about this and word gets out on the street that you're truly dedicated to helping educate young people, not just using them. I don't mean that in a negative, derogatory sense, but you're doing more than expecting things from them. You're actually providing education for them. That turns the whole picture upside down.
It does, because end of the day, they are guests of our business. Whether they work there or not, we want them to come back, right? That's the whole point of all that. It's how do we get and keep more people engaged into our brand. And so while they're having this experience with us, let them think about it later on down the road when they hit their first career or they get to college and they're like, wow, I know a lot of this stuff already. I learned how to properly shake someone's hand and look them in the eye. And I've learned so much from this first job that I had that's helping me out in my life now.
Well, here's what's interesting. It's counterintuitive. Because you're saying we're embracing turnover, yet you're investing so heavily that while you're investing heavily, you're reducing your turnover. But you're saying it's okay because we want to launch all these young entrepreneurs into the market to be successful. But because you're investing in them, they want to stick around and learn more. It's great. I love it. It's fantastic.
And because one thing that I learned, and I was guilty of this when I was a restaurant manager at age 18, is that if somebody is not here for the long term, or it's a summer job for them, naturally you might think, I don't know if I want to go through the full course with them, or I don't know if I want to sit down and do those consultative approaches and have these dialogues and evaluations because they're leaving in a month. But if you erase that mentality and say, hey, everyone's here to be a part of this team, I'm going to provide the same value, the same training, the same education to everybody, it makes you feel better as well. Right now, you're driven to help that person out to ensure that they leave again better than basically how you found them and when you met them, and that hopefully one day you're seeing them, grow in their careers and doing something great. But all in all, the approach it creates a lot of conflict and pushback. But if people just commit to it, they start to see the difference, and then they just accept it. Like, okay, this is great.
Here's the part I love. oftentimes in a workshop setting, I'll ask team leaders, so what do you expect from your people? And they're really quick to tell me what they expect, because we all expect certain performance, we expect certain standards. But then I'll say, that's what you want from your people. What do you want for your people? And what you want for your people goes beyond verbiage. It's not just rhetoric. What you want for them is a healthy understanding of what business involves, how they can learn and become actively prepared to launch their career once their education, whether it be at the high school level or the university level, once they launch into the marketplace, they're more prepared than they would have been before. So it's a tremendous investment in young talent. And so speaking of young talent, I got an obvious question for you. You're 31 years old. You're the president of a franchise organization. Some of the partners that you've got are twice your age.
Yes, they are.
So how do you, as a young leader, garner respect and trust that gives you the right, the street cred to lead an organization like Orange Leader?
You definitely don't start with it, right?
It's not just bestowed.
It's not there. This has been an area that I've had to, it's been a struggle, but this is an area I had to deal with since my entire career. When I was age 19, I got hired on to run training for a smaller organization at the time called Genghis Grill. They had 7 locations. They just signed their first franchise. They reached out to me because I had scored 100% on a thing called a mystery shopper. Didn't know what that was. I was waiting tables, minding my own business, rollerblading around the country. That's all I really cared about at the time. A group came out and said, yes, you scored the first 100% on the shop. We want to know how you did it. And I was like, I just did what your training manual said. And they said, well, that's amazing. We want to talk about some other opportunities for you. It's like, okay, sure. We just signed a franchise agreement. I didn't know what that was. Said, great. It's in Wheaton, Illinois. We want to send you out there and open our first store.
Train the team.
Right, our first franchise store. And I was like, okay, let's figure this out. There was no manuals, in terms of how to open a store. There was no guides. There was no, you just didn't know what you were doing. You just kind of got on site and you figured it out. From where everything goes to building shelves to training the 100 team members they hired. And again, just establishing this first franchise location was huge. And so as I went through all that, of course, I am hiring, unfortunately having to fire, having to gain trust and respect from people who in almost every situation were older than me, right? Especially the franchisees. And now fast forward, I was there for several years and we got from 7 stores to 100 stores, and I was involved in every single store and franchise partner in that mix. And that's where I learned so much about business, so much about franchising, which is why I have a passion for teaching that at an earlier age, because not many people have that opportunity to learn and grow with a brand. But that whole time in my career, I had to confront people that were older. And at first it never worked. The first guy I had to manage was 45 and I was 20. Direct, supervisor of this person. If anything, he taught me more than what I was teaching him at the time. But I learned that when I was trying to manage versus lead, it did not respond well. And so the first thing I started to catch on at an early age was just listen. Regardless of whose role is what, just listen. Hear what they have to say. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Because people want to be heard.
Right. They want to be heard. They want you they want to make sure that you're on the same page of them and you hear where they're coming from. And when I started to notice that I would listen first and then respond with either feedback or just my thoughts or maybe just a simple agreement, people started to become closer to me and they started to try to help me versus work against me.
So when you asked questions and you listened intently to what they had to say rather than telling them what to do, it changed the dynamic. I think the lost art of leadership isn't asking good questions.
Right.
And so often we think as a subject matter experts, we have to tell people what to do.
Right.
And in reality, if we ask a good question, if we listen intently to the response, our guests will tell us what they need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guests in the store, or from your standpoint, franchisees to the franchisor. If we ask the right questions and listen intently, we gain credibility, we engender trust, we hear what's being said, we learn something, they feel like they've connected because they've been heard.
Right.
And that is the lost art of leadership.
Right.
So absolutely. I think it was brilliant. I just commend you. It's a wonderful way to get everybody on the same page by feeling heard, and for you to be able to take back information to corporate that you needed to have access to in order to make good decisions.
And then the fun begins, right? Now it's time to execute.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got their engagement. They're listening. They start to respect you, but now they're going to sit back and wait to see what you actually do with that information. Yeah. And so we made sure that communication was flowing both ways, even invested in technologies to ensure we could all reach each other at any given time and, for any different reasons. And so we had to make sure that we showed that we were following up with the things that we said we would do. Had to respond to some ideas and just say, hey, look, we're not going to do this, but here's why. But then we did the follow through and we executed upon it. And when that happened, franchise satisfaction scores raised 50% from where they were.
That's huge.
More of our single unit operators became multi-unit operators. And we had some invest in our new co-brand idea, which is a brand, we created internally. But the point is that so many people started to change the way they thought and I guess produced in the brand. And we now have so many people supporting us and who are in our corner and working on this with us versus the beginning, they were always against us.
Well, because now their fingerprints are on.
Right.
They have ownership in it.
Right.
That's so powerful. Right. So we've talked about this idea of being a young leader, gaining credibility with people who've been in the business maybe even longer than you have.
Right.
But talk to me now about generational differences, because we've got a workforce that's varied. How do you get them on the same page? How do you unify a very diverse workforce?
Right. Very challenging, right? At any given time, you could have 4 to sometimes 5, in a lot of situations, different generations all working in the same place.
That's right.
Right? Typically, it's between Gen Zs up to baby boomers, but sometimes it even goes into the traditionalist, right? And now you got all types of different ways you have to learn how to communicate. The first thing that I try to focus on is how to communicate 7 times, 7 ways. It's an old saying, but the mentality fits the challenge that we have. We have to communicate we have to try to communicate 7 different types of ways because there's 7 different learning styles. So with 7 different learning styles, you don't know what you have out there in terms of your workforce. And so if you focus on just the common one today, which is digital, and just went after the e-learning and the short bite-sized videos, that's great. But that might only work for Gen Z and some millennials. Myself personally, I'm considered a millennial, but I'm on the older side of it. I still remember when the laptops came out and the first cell phone and when you could start text messaging, and it's game changing. But I am a mixture of both. I'm very visual. I like the e-learning. I like the short videos, but at the same time, I want some context. I want to understand it. So I need some literature to help me buy into something, right? But it's trying to figure out how you address not only the learning styles, but now it's taking those learning styles and assuming that they're generational. And so how can you reach all? Well, what we focus on personally, and it's a big thing for me, is okay, let's create let's say it's either a new product or it's a very important communication. What are all the ways that we can send it out? And 7 isn't the literal number we try to hit, because everything's different. Sometimes it's only be 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10. And so we keep that in mind depending upon what it is. If it is the basics of how to operate an orange leaf, let's say, then we're going to make it, we're going to focus on more of an 8th grade reading level. That's the most common, in the workforce today. We're going to make them short, bite-sized training videos, fun, unique, probably have a team member of similar age lead those videos and be the star of them. Have some fun with that, because we know that's who's going to be watching those videos the most. If it was about a new, let's say, franchise opportunity or new co-brand opportunity that could impact all the franchisees as a whole, we're probably going to go more after, face-to-face, have some more literature behind it, an ROI, a business case, and really dive in further. But to me, that's really where you have to focus, is how you try to communicate so many different ways and too many isn't a thing. There's no way to communicate too much.
Right. Got it. So you want to hit as many modalities as you possibly can when it comes to learning experience. And I think it's brilliant.
Right.
But take that a little bit further. So the importance of telling the story correctly. I mean, you're a big proponent of making sure everybody understands the why.
Right.
And as we talked, for a while, you kind of floundered in that space. And finally, you landed on a message that was clear, and you heralded that message across the board with great results.
Right.
So what's the tagline for Orange Leaf Frozen Yogurt?
Sure.
How did you get there, and how has it made a difference?
Okay. It's all about making life sweeter. That's where we landed. Make life sweeter. Whether that's through franchising, whether that's through the products we provide, the experience we provide, but it's all about making life sweeter. And so we landed on make life sweeter by just taking a step back and looking at all the things we were doing and what the end result of them all were. Right? Why do you go to a treat place? Why do you go to enjoy ice cream or frozen yogurt or smoothie? And we really wanted to hone in on that. So our mission statement is to create a memorable treat experience that is all about you. And by doing that, we're going to make life sweeter. Right? So we're making life sweeter through those memorable experiences, and we're there for whatever occasion somebody wants to come to us for. Right? And so now that we've established that, it's easier to understand why we're going after it, why we're going to work that morning, why we're trying to make the experience for the next family that walks in better than the last one. It's because we want to make life sweeter.
But here's the thing, when you wrapped your mind around that, you decided you wanted to articulate it in that way, it just made sense.
Just made sense.
It didn't surprise anybody.
No.
It felt good.
It felt really good.
And so I think that's telling that story in such a way that it just resonates with their experience. That's what you stand for. That's what you do. That's what you are doing as you invest in young people.
Right.
It makes sense. And the same thing applies to culture. I think sometimes organizations try to go out and emulate the culture of another group.
Right.
And they strain to try to make it fit.
Right.
When in reality, culture is your natural DNA. It's an expression of your own constitution and who you are.
Right.
And as you begin to embrace that and embody that, it just makes sense because it fits who you are.
Absolutely.
And that's when it feels good. That's when it feels comfortable.
Right. Right. And people get behind it and they support it because they helped create it naturally. Not forcefully, we didn't sit down and say, okay,
you didn't
we're going to
choose 5 values and say, this forcefully is who we are. It's just a wellspring out of who you are.
Right. Yeah. Right. And it all came from listening, taking in the feedback, taking in the research, the data. We even sent out a survey to our most loyal guests to see what their response was. And again, everything just came back, this whole idea of how we're making things sweeter. Right. So let's just go ahead and go after making life sweeter.
It's really good.
So that's really where we've landed as of now.
So what advice would you give to young people entering the workforce today? Any tidbits you'd throw their way?
There's a lot. The first thing I would say is to listen. I know I've harped on that, but I would go into a new career, a new job. I would go in and just listen, take in all the information, and figure out a way to add the value, right? Other than that, we have to remember that because of all these, because of the large gap in generations that we have that are spread across, you're going to be working with several different types of people. And they're not all going to want to communicate with you the same way. They're not all going to want to think the same way about a subject. And so you have to go in with an open mind and just figure out how you can get along with everybody, right? How can you be there to support everybody? And especially with today's youth, and again, luckily I learned this from being called out in a younger age and people critiquing me, but we have to focus on those soft skills. No matter how good you are at something, no matter if you're the best person at your craft, if you cannot connect with somebody, make the eye contact, shake their hands, strike up a conversation, it's going to be very difficult to move forward in a career. And all of us, right, these days are getting so used to the texting and always on our phones, and we're used to information hitting us so fast that we sometimes lose that focus of, oh, yeah, we need to interact with these people. And so just remember that you may be used to one way, but somebody else at your job or in your career or in your pathway is not used to that. And so we have to make sure the core that we all know is out there and has been established for many years is still being executed upon. To me, I learned a lot the hard way when it came to that. right? And then it goes back to how you can build respect and build the trust is by taking the time to truly interact with somebody.
So would you say it's all about relationships?
I would. I would. I mean, it truly is. If you really think about it, if you have an established relationship with a guest, with a team member, with a franchisee, no matter who it is, you can move the needle. You can raise the bar with anything.
Yeah.
But without that, you can't get that far. Yeah. There's only so much you can do. And again, it goes back to your why. What are you trying to accomplish, and what is it that you're passionate about? And I think that just makes the most difference. But.
Well, words wisely spoken. Thanks, man. It's always good hanging out with you. I am invigorated every time we get together. You make me feel younger. So thank you.
Good.
I appreciate that. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Randy. I appreciate it.
All right, man.
Thank you.